Well, greetings and salutations, folks. I hope all is well. Welcome to this second and night-ending bonus upload. Before we jump on into it, a couple quick links. As many of you may know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. These audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support this channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click the bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment and share the video. Why? Well, these things, they really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. They definitely do matter, and I do appreciate them. And with that, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to this second and night-ending bonus upload, shall we? All right, folks. Wow. We officially got our first snowfall in the foothills of the Adirondacks. We've gotten a couple, little spits here and there, but we officially reached 8 inches in one day, actually in less than 12 hours. And it was a long day of snow blowing and shoveling. I had to do my yard twice, my parents' yard once, and then tomorrow morning get up and do their yard once more. But wow. And I don't mind it either. It physically, it's draining, but it's just something about winter that I really enjoy. I'm not a big fan of summer, but I love spring, fall. And I don't really mind winter that bad either. But I love it, the first snowfall when it happens. It's just, everything is so pretty and calm and quiet. And then 3 days later, it looks like absolute ass. But anyway, let's jump into this second and night-ending bonus. Today's first experience. I recently saw a post on Facebook of a journalist who talked about 2 boys seeing a creature in the county next to where my family lived. It got me thinking about an experience that happened to my aunt shortly before I was born. My aunt had told me and anyone who asked about the experience, and also no matter what, it never changed. She stood on what she saw. It was real, no matter who believed her. One night, her and her boyfriend were driving down the road and they were coming to a railroad crossing. When they got closer, they had seen this 8-foot-tall creature standing on the side of the road. I always remembered her saying that it had glowing eyes. Weirdly enough, she always thought that this thing kind of smirked at her as they drove past. It did not chase them or try to do anything. It just stood there staring and watching as they drove past. She had always described it as looking just like the werewolf from Van Helsing. This was before she married my uncle, and I think the experience of hers brought them closer because he had an experience of his own as a child. When he was a child walking home, at this time he lived in the country. I'm talking about maybe 200 people lived in the area. I also used to live there. Just so you can get an idea of how he felt being the only person outside at the time. He also saw an 8-foot-tall creature that scared him to death. He ran all the way home, busting through the door. He had told my grandmother what he had seen, and I am not sure if my grandmother believed him or not. I asked her when I got older, and she said he was so terrified that whether she saw it or not, he still saw something that scared him badly. A few years ago, my uncle started getting into listening to experiences on Dogman. He listens to every kind of cryptid story and experience on YouTube and reads any book he can on Dogman. He is the one that wholeheartedly believes in the Dogman. So, I've said this 1,000 times. Once a person has an encounter, they usually go two ways. One, they deep dive into the community. They will watch any video that says Dogman. If it says Dogman in the title, they are watching it, regardless of what it is. They also will read whatever they can get their hands on. Then there is the exact opposite, where that person just kind of secludes themselves from everyone. And a perfect analogy of this is there were two young girls, and I believe they were in New Jersey. I don't remember the exact location, because this was about 7 years ago when I heard the experience. They had either snuck out of their house or had permission to be outside well after dark. I think they had snuck out, not to party or anything, just to, they're 13, 14, 15 years old. They just wanted to rebel, that kind of youth gone wild. They had heard some sort of kind of ruckus by this abandoned house, and they walked down this little alley between the house and the other, and they saw this just huge Dogman standing in this abandoned home, glowing red eyes. They booked it home, and right after, the one sister, which I really want to say they were twins, which made it all the more strange. One sister kind of just goes into a shell, will not talk about it, will not listen to anything about it, just doesn't want to relive that night. And the other sister will read, watch, whatever, listen to any kind of Dogman experience she can get her hands on. And I said I think they were twins because of that weird factor that maternal twins have, where they both usually have the kind of same outlook on things. But one just right in a shell. One, let's learn as much as we can. So, like this person's uncle, wholeheartedly, he was terrified, but now he wants to know more than he knew at that period of time. Today's second encounter. I take my two dogs for walks. I normally walk Finn, my large all-black German Shepherd, toward the park, where I've had these experiences. I walk Booger, my Chi Terrier mix, the other direction, towards downtown. On my walk with Finn, about a block away in the direction I was heading, I saw 3 or 4 deer calmly walking toward the park. Most nights where something weird happens to me starts like this. The deer seemed completely unbothered by me as I approached. They kept walking toward the park, did not stop, but stopped every few steps to look back at me, as if they wanted me to follow them. Then, as Finn and I reached to where the deer were, I noticed about 10 more of them standing, waiting as well. They all started walking together calmly, but still looked back at me every few feet. On my way toward the park, I smell a stench of rotting meat. I know the smell well, as I used to be a butcher. It was strong, like someone plugged my nostrils with rotting ground meat, or something. At the same time I smell this stench, I get the chills. Finn's hair stands up on end, and he gets nervous. I can feel the air around me getting colder. As we continue walking, I look down the alley that cuts the block in half, and if you walk down that dark alley, It would bring you to the spot where I eventually walked back home. I was 2 blocks away from the park. When you reach the park, you can either turn around and walk down that same road, you can continue into the park, or you can continue on the road, which turns left. Looking down the alley, you are looking at that part of the road that continues left, which is the way that I take every night on my way home. What I saw, I tried to convince myself was not real, or maybe I just saw something else, and my brain tried to convince me it was this. A large, muscular, pale, hairless creature that was moving fast, so fast I could barely see it. I saw the motion down the alley about 2 blocks away. The exit of the alley on the side has a street light directly above it. It wasn't standing still. It was moving, and it was moving fast. The only reason I am positive that what I saw was not a deer or something normal, because of something I saw later that night that I will share later when I take my walk with Booger. It solidified what I saw was something I was not supposed to see. In the meantime, I convinced myself I was making this up and being a Sally. As I approached the tree line of the park, a large group of deer moved to the side of the street where the neighborhood is. While I am on that side of the tree line, I notice something is in the clearing. A lone deer, separate from the large group across the street, staring directly at me. I have my flashlight pointed at him, and I even hung up my call with my wife to use my phone to take a video. This lone deer doesn't even have micro movements of breathing. The other deer across the street are constantly readjusting. You might be thinking to yourself, oh yeah, deer do that in the bright lights shining at them. Deer in headlights always act like that. Just wait. Finn starts to pull very hard and acts anxious, nearly knocking me over. I turn and look across the street down towards the large group of deer for almost 3 seconds before quickly turning around to face the lone one. In those 3 seconds, the lone deer is easily 30 feet closer to me, still not moving, staring directly at me. I have this on video. I have pictures of these deer. I feel weird. I felt unsafe. I've lived in rural Iowa my entire life. I am and have always lived outdoors. This did not feel normal. I was scared. I back away while shining my light at the deer. Once I got a block or so away, it finally turns around and calmly walks into the tree line. My whole way home, I feel like I am being stalked. Not just deer. Not just watched, but like something is following me. Now I went home and I sat for a bit and tried to talk myself into believing that it was coincidence. After nearly 20 minutes, I take Booger for a walk, my small Chi Mix. The entire walk was nice and enjoyable, actually. I had my earbuds in and was talking to my wife about what I had seen in a joking manner. Man, I'm such a Sally, I say. I was really scared for no reason. At the end of the walk, I turned to go down our alley. As I leave the garage on our walks, I stopped speaking from what I saw on the opposite end of the alley. My wife heard me stop. I want to preface this by saying I do not have any substances, including alcohol, for weeks up at that point. The most I'd ever do in that department is a few beers, or I'll use some weed to ease the anxiety of life getting hard. I have no mental conditions that will cause me to hallucinate. The most I have is a personality disorder resulting from trauma that I have overcame quickly. I saw 2 large, muscular, pale creatures walking like ape at the end of the alley. The same thing I thought I saw with Finn. This time not going fast and much closer. And it felt intentional. I saw them walk across the street very slowly, staring directly at me. These were not deer. They didn't have long face like deer. They didn't have fur or tails. They didn't even walk like a deer. They weren't slender like a deer. My first thought was, honestly, that I was looking at two hairless male lions. I stood there, paralyzed in fear. Well, after that, they left my sight. 15 seconds later, I finally got the courage to walk a few feet into my garage. When I took that first step, I saw a third one slowly meandering across the street, staring at me. Booger noticed him as well and started growling. I ran to the door and watched the garage shut all the way. The entire night, Finn guarded the bedroom. He never does that. He sat staring at the door all night. Booger stared at the windows all night. He never does that either. This happened to me back in May of 2024. Thanks for letting me share. Today's third encounter. I've always been fascinated by urban legends and tales of supernatural creatures. I've heard of the Michigan Dogman since I was young, when I first heard the legend played on the radio. A mysterious creature said to roam the forests of the Great Lake region. And with my fascination came a sense of wanting to find the creature, and to see for myself if it was really out there. Armed with a curious mind and a flashlight, I set out to explore the woods near my hometown. It was an overcast night, with only the dim glow of the stars to guide my path. As I ventured deeper into the forest, I could not shake off the feeling that I was being watched. Every rustle of leaves and snap of the twigs sent shivers down my spine, but I pressed on, my curiosity overpowering my unease. Little did I know how much of a mistake it was to ignore my instincts. After what felt like hours of wandering, I stumbled forward. An eerie silence blanketed the forest, as if a switch was flipped, and all the sound in the world disappeared. Something drew me toward it, an invisible force urging me to step closer. That's when I surveyed my surroundings in detail and saw it, a pair of glowing, amber-colored eyes staring back at me from the shadows. My heart skipped a beat as this creature revealed itself, a massive canine-like figure, standing upright on its hind legs, its fur matted and dark. Its eyes glowed with an otherworldly light. It was a Dogman, and it had me fixed in its gaze. A primal fear surged through my veins, and I stumbled back, dropping my flashlight in the process. And with a moment's hesitation, I turned and ran as fast as my legs would carry me. The sound of heavy footfalls pounded behind me, growing louder and closer with each passing second. I could hear its snarls and the sharp snapping of its jaws, hungry for the chase. My breath grew ragged and my muscles screamed in protest, but the adrenaline fueled my desperate sprint. Branches whipping me in my face and the forest floor seemed to rise up to trip me. But I pushed through, determined to escape the clutches of this creature. My lungs burned and my vision blurred as I reached the edge of the forest. My house stood a few yards away, its lights providing a beacon. Summoning my last reservoir of strength, I sprinted across the lawn, flung open the front door, and slammed it shut. Panting heavily as I leaned against it, my heart racing. I felt a mixture of relief and terror as I looked through the window and I saw the Dogman standing at the edge of the clearing. Its gaze fixed upon me, its mouth curled into a wicked snarl, revealing sharp and glistening teeth and what looked like a cruel and deranged smile. For a moment we locked eyes, the battle of wills between human and beast. I knew that I had escaped, but the encounter had left a mark in my soul. This Dogman had showed me the darkness lurking just beyond the realm of our understanding, and it was a sight I would never forget. And to this day I am plagued with the memory of that night. The image of the Dogman's glowing eyes and sinister grin haunts my dreams, a constant reminder of the terrors that exist in the shadows. I warn anyone who dares to venture into Michigan's wilderness. Beware of the Dogman's domain. It may be an urban legend to some, but for those who have encountered this creature, it is far too real. The forest hides its secrets, and the Dogman waits patiently for its next victim. Ever since then, I haven't been able to look at the woods without a shudder, hoping not to see those ember eyes staring back at me. Thank you for allowing me to share. Please, everyone, don't go out at night. Today's fourth encounter. Just down the road from where a few years ago I had previously lived in Southeast Australia is an opening into about 100 acres of woodland and bush that I frequently went into when I was younger to do the usual things, riding, camping, etc. I was out driving at around 11:30 p.m. with my girlfriend, and as we were in the area, decided to show her the woodlands while we were here, as she loves everything to do with nature, and it was summer, so it was an extremely warm night. I left my car with the light shining into the trees as we weren't going too far in and it was pitch black inside. And the two of us just kind of sat chatting, having a smoke and generally relaxing. She was sitting on a sort of map of the area that had been put in on some plastic, and I was keeping an eye on the trees, as I had a feeling that something was not right. I've read that people have said they have felt they were in danger, although nothing around them was off. And it was that same feeling. Every sense was almost reaching out and my adrenaline was up. But there wasn't really anything to do with my eye line that seemed any different. After lighting another cigarette to calm my nerves, I scanned the tree line again and realized that it looked different than before. It was only after staring into the dark that I saw that there was moonlight now lighting up grass where it couldn't before, as there was a black shape blocking it before I thought was a tree. I got goosebumps just typing this out. The only way to describe it was that all sound had ceased and everything went dead silent a few seconds later. This disgusting feeling of dread fell all over me, and I saw motion in the dark of the path as this thing crawled towards us on all fours. I've seen nearly every animal in the outback here, and we don't have any large predators like the United States or Europe. But somehow I knew this thing was a predator, and it wasn't hiding from us, but slowly crawling forward towards us. I don't know if my girlfriend saw it or at night, as I couldn't look away, but just as it reached the line of my car lights were able to be illuminated, it reared up on its hind legs and just sat staring at us. I'm 6'4", and this thing was about another meter larger than me, with arms that were far too long that reached out down near the ground, and all I could make out was this off-whitish, almost yellow fur on it. In the dim light, could make out the silhouette of its head, which was that of a wolf or a dog. I wasn't able to move as it stared at me, but it was at this point my girlfriend gasped, which seemed to break off whatever was stopping me from thinking. I grabbed her by the arm and sprinted toward the car, slammed the doors, and tore out of there as fast as I could, both of us too scared to speak upon it. About half an hour later, we've been discussing it many times, and the feeling that we had was what we imagine a rabbit sees when it catches a wolf or a fox looking at it. That is something that would be able to end us with absolute ease. Neither of us have been able to come up with an explanation for what it was, but it has definitely changed the way that I view the woods and the bush when I go camping or hiking now. I think back to that and wonder what it was and if I will ever see it again. Something that I wanted to touch on really quick was from the second experience. I've never heard of someone describing a crawler the way he did. He said they were humanoid, white creatures, hairless, but walked and were as large as an ape. Usually crawlers are narrow, skinny, very kind of gray alien-like. These, or whatever he saw, was far different than the typical crawler description. And I truly do believe that crawlers were created by the government, but I think by the alien agenda well before us, even well before our government shook hands with the Draco and gave permission to kidnap and torture humanity. So, but maybe what he saw were the muscle of the bunch. Who knows? I don't know. But it just struck me as odd, hairless, white, but as large as an ape. Crazy. Today's next encounter. It was 2015 and I had gone camping with 3 of my friends. This was our 3rd time camping and we were staying at a pay-to-stay campground. We even stayed in a cabin by the lake, so we were not out in the wild. Back then I used to get panic attacks sometimes for no reason. And for some reason, despite my immense love of nature, ever since my first camping trip, I would often get panic attacks while camping, and I don't know why. That night, I had one, and it was pretty severe to the point where I felt like I couldn't breathe if I stayed in the cabin, but I would get scared if I stayed outside. So I had a lot of back and forth with my poor friends that put up with me. At one point, I had stepped outside with one of them, my significant other, and was trying to calm down. And also wondering where to pee. My significant other had a flashlight and was leading me to the spot in the dirt at the edge of the trees between our 2 parked cars. He reasoned it was a good distance from the cabin and yet not in the middle of the woods where some critter could catch me with my pants down. So I agreed. And that's when I saw it. I can still remember. I stepped past the first car and looked between the cars toward the edge of the woods, between the candles at the cabin and the flashlight nearby, but not directly upon the spot where I saw it. I saw something, a creature. It was strange because it was silent. The creature had the general body shape of a dog, but its colors were more like that of a hyena, kind of gray and dark patches. It stood perfectly still, peeking out behind the first car, so I only saw its torso and the head and the front legs. The thing I'll never get over was its face. It looked like it had been frozen in time with its jaw wide open, revealing sharp teeth. Its eyes were staring right at me, but its nose was not wrinkled like a snarl. And there was no growling, no sound. It was the oddest thing. And it sent, in an instant, deep ball of dread to my core. After I froze for a long moment, I grabbed my significant other's arm and whispered to him to go back to the cabin. I forgot to mention that the eyes were glowing, probably reflecting from the light. We get to the cabin, the other 2 friends are asleep. My significant other didn't see it at all, I don't think. I can ask him. I couldn't sleep that night with a panic. And now, that first sight, I eventually went and slept in the car. Somehow I felt safer. Today's next encounter. I'd like to begin by saying I am 57 years old with a professional career, a son who I adore, and a husband who, like me, is completely sane but terrified at what we saw. The experience I'm going to share with you is true and is pretty much one of the first times I have ever shared this, except with just close personal friends that I knew would believe us. One thing for sure, we will never return to those mountains. September of 2023, myself and my husband went to Asheville, North Carolina to attend a wedding. We live on the coast of North Carolina, and the drive to Asheville is about 5 hours. We attended the wedding and still had 2 days left to explore, and one of those days we decided on Mount Mitchell, which was only a 45-minute drive from where we were staying. We did not realize it would be so much walking, but fortunately, we were both in decent shape. We made it to the top of Mount Mitchell, then walked about 15 minutes south, east, deeper into the woods, which was the opposite way of the parking lot. In between Mount Mitchell and Commissionary Ridge, to be exact, the views were spectacular. However, the fog that late afternoon was thick. You could not see too far around. It had been very rainy that week, so if you could just imagine the ambiance of damp fog amid deep brush, following an old dirt trail with wood planks atop the mountain. It was all so beautiful, but in a very creepy way. It was my husband who noticed at first the smell, and it hit him like a ton of bricks. I watched him gasp for air, but then he began coughing and gagging to the point snot was dripping from his nose. I thought he may have swallowed his water wrong, but at that moment the smell hit me too. It wasn't just the smell. It almost burnt the hairs in my nostrils. It almost stung. I started dry heaving, and that exact moment we became even more taken back when a very large tree branch came crashing down a little behind and to the left of us. It startled us both, and I yelled while still gagging on the smell and burning my nose. My husband finally got his breath and exclaimed, "WTF is that smell?" Rare for my husband to swear. The only way that I can describe the smell is vomit and stomach acid with a very strong, concentrated urine smell with a hint of rotten milk. There was also a sweet smell of something mixed in. It's very difficult for my brain to process that smell, sickening and putrid. I'm a nurse and have never been so sickened by smell until that day. I said to my husband, "Let's head back." And without hesitation, we did. We then immediately noticed that there was movement by a large tree branch that had fallen, now on our right side. We are walking and still coughing, some coming closer. This branch was about 20 to 25 feet long and about 40 feet from us off the trail. This large branch had several other smaller branches stemming off of it, some looking like spikes almost. That is when we saw an animal, still moving somewhat, impaled on one of the smaller limbs or spikes of this large branch. My husband was sure that it was a red fox. The fox was twitching and then appeared to have died immediately. It looked almost as if the fox had fallen from the sky, landed right on that spiked limb, bottom first, and from its mouth protruded the end of the spike. We both knew it had to have just happened for the fox to still be twitching. When we saw it, of course, it died within seconds. After we processed what we were looking at, the silhouette of a man appeared behind the large limb in the fog. Assuming it was an off-trail hiker, and we watched the man get closer to the limb, and our eyes took a few seconds to focus. And it was a man, but now not from this planet. We are still coughing and gagging and stopped on the trail at this point. I saw what it was, and it was not a man. It was shaped like a man. It stood 6'2" and was both skinny and muscular at the same time. The hands were large. We could see its body was almost mangled up or deformed because of its protrusions throughout its body. It leaned to one side and stepped over the large branch, and we could see some kind of animal that my husband nor I could identify was in this thing's hands, and he then took the animal, which was obviously dead, made no effort at all, shoved it on the spike on the top where the fox was. I think it may have been a rabbit just because of the size. Our coughing and gagging continued, and I got very dizzy. Looked at my husband at first, then it turned its head, slowly looking at me. Its face I will never forget, and a face that I wish I could forget. Its eyes were cloudy gray. It looked like it had no eyelids. The right eye socket was higher on its face than the left. I don't remember anything else about the face, except it was chewing very slowly and tilted its head some while it looked away. It looked away. The body looked like a man. The rib cage protruded some, penis evident. Skin looked ripped in some areas, and then some areas almost looked burnt to a crisp, but the overall skin color was a pale gray, pinkish color. Very odd color. My husband and I are now walking backward as we watching it back away from us. What it did then, I will never forget. It raised its hand and took its pointer finger and moved it back and forth like a tisk, 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 or no, 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 as if we were not supposed to be here. It moved its finger like that for a few times while still chewing, and its head tilt. I began crying immediately, crying hard to the point my body convulsed. My husband grabbed my hand harder and couldn't back away while walking almost backward carefully until we walked around the curve in the path and lost sight of it. It stared at us right up until that moment. My husband grabbed my hand harder, and we continued to back away, still walking almost backward carefully until we walked around the curve of the path and lost sight of it. We ran as fast as a couple in their 50s could while hysterically crying. We made it to Mount Mitchell parking lot, and we jumped in our truck, locked the doors, and drove away. We can still smell it. It's burnt into our nostrils and still coughing some. My husband then, all of a sudden, pulls over on the side of the road and opens his door and vomits. He then says, "That's not a Bigfoot," and I reply, "I know." We didn't know what it was, but all we did know was it was not a Bigfoot. We left a day early and took the 5-hour drive back home. That's all we could think about. My very religious husband believed it was a demonic entity. I still am not sure what we saw until someone that I shared this with talked about feral humans, stating that that is what we saw. After a long debate, we finally decided that we would not report the encounter to Park Service out of fear of being laughed at. I want to also add that I am the biggest skeptic there is, but what my eyes saw that day was almost incomprehensible, something that eyes of mankind should never gaze upon. Even 6 months later, I can still see it, and it still sometimes get a whiff of it. It's embedded into our being. The encounter has made me question everything I thought I knew. And just know, we don't plan on returning to those mountains ever again. I pray that those who do visit will please be very careful. Over the past few months, having time to think about it all, I recall that it almost felt like something watching us from the opposite side of the trail, and me and my husband wondering if there were more of them. There are feral humans in those mountains, and I will never question that again. So, for tonight's final experience, I shared this like 5 years ago, and after sharing it, it brought up a couple of emotions. One, sadness. Sadness for the family, sadness for the person. And two, anger. Anger at Dogman. And that's when I got that kind of feeling of when these things, invade our space, hurt our people, that's when we put them down. No ifs, ands, or buts. There's people that disagree with that, but I don't understand how or why. They're killing machines. They're evil. There's been a few kind ones, or if you want to call that kind, like, the pregnant woman. But who's to say they're always like that? I don't know. Just this experience really triggered something in me. So let's get into it. This happened about 7 years ago to my uncle. He's no longer with us, and I'd like to share this experience in memory of him. Growing up, I lived in northern Michigan on 5,000 acres of farm/ranch land that backed up into state land. Nothing but miles of forest and pasture could be seen. Needless to say, it made us tough as nails, and it took a lot to spook us. We're all avid hunters, fishermen, and outdoorsmen. Being a girl, I was raised as a tomboy, and I still am. My uncle went off and joined the military, becoming a senior NCO in a prominent Special Force Division of the United States Navy. 6'4", built like a wrestler, obviously skilled in survival tactics. Nothing rattled him. He was home on leave and went out hunting. It was deer season after all. I remember him coming back to the house, shaking and crying, saying he'd seen something in the woods. My uncle never cried. He was tough as nails again, and would tear someone to shreds before making him cry. Grandma tried to get him to make sense, but all he kept saying was he saw a Bigfoot that was mixed with a wolf. My grandmother immediately got my granddad and rounded up the rest of the guys, my dad, a few male cousins, and my uncle, who was still terrified but went because he didn't want to be labeled a chicken. They all got their shotguns, ammo, and saddled the horses to go and clear the woods. Apparently, they were aware of Dogman, but I was blissfully young and ignorant. They told me to stay inside and for no reason to step outside of the house until they returned. I had never heard my dad or granddad so serious, so I did hide in my room. Sunset was coming and they still weren't back. I was getting worried at this point because they never stayed in the woods until after dark. Shortly, I heard the sound of the horses returning to the barn, and then I heard their voices. I was so relieved. They looked troubled when they came in the house, but didn't say a thing, probably not to spook me. At dinner, my dad laid down the law that I was no longer allowed outside or to go in the barns alone. I had to have my granddad with me at all times, and of course I was upset. I felt like my independence was taken, but I obeyed. The next morning, my dad and granddad taught me how to shoot. I knew this was serious. I overheard the adults talking the next night. Apparently there were tracks where my uncle had his sighting, bigger than any wolf could make, but they were definitely canine. As I said before, avid hunters and outdoorsmen, can identify tracks easily, but these could not be identified. About 8 feet up in the tree were claw marks. No Michigan bear could make those. We found claw marks of about the same height on multiple trees throughout our property. Had cattle mutilated, and not in a way a bear or coyote would do. Lasted the whole winter. We actually lost 30 to 40 cattle that winter, all of them mutilated, all with the same wolf/dog tracks around them in the snow. I really feel like this experience changed my uncle. Who knows? He did multiple tours in the Middle East, and Operation Desert Storm and Operation Iraqi Freedom, before he took his own life. After the experience, though, he was never the same. He went from never drinking to never seeing him without a bottle of Jack in his hands. He changed his personality, never went out in the woods again, quit hunting. He eventually just quit coming home on leave. He didn't even come home for my dad's funeral 2 years later. It was heartbreaking to see him deteriorate the way he did. I truly believe he saw something, but and it ultimately killed my uncle. All right, folks, there you have it. I hope you all enjoyed this second and night-ending bonus as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd really like to thank you all for supporting the channel. It is, after all, your support that helps this channel to continue to grow and go, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free. Everyone is simply treated with the respect that we deserve. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant. Keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. These events have happened. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless you all.